I'm just going to assume that you know what ChatGPT is. It's now been around a year since I first heard of it, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that it has changed my academic life like nothing else before it. Sometimes I really wish that it came out just a couple of years earlier, so I could have used it in my GCSE and AS days. And so that's why I'm here making this video, so that you guys can use it in a way that I would if I were to go back. Of course, this video is not to teach you how to sneak in your phone into the exam hall so that you can use GPT while doing an exam. You can 100% get a boost of at least 2 grades if you use GPT right while studying. It will make your studying more efficient, meaning that you'll get to study less and get the same results. Or it'll help you jump from a 6 to an 8 or a 7 to a 9. There's no downside to using ChatGPT while studying. In fact, it's getting to the point where you kind of have to. Here's a graph that illustrates how fast the growth of ChatGPT was. The previous record for the shortest time taken for an application to reach 1 million users was held by Instagram, and it was 2.5 months. ChatGPT took 5 days. And there's a general rule that states that once your parents start talking about something, that's how you know that it's gone mainstream. From my experience, it applies even more heavily when your parents are Arab. And my Arab mom has been using ChatGPT for around 6 months now. So if that's not mainstream, I have no idea what is. And so the point is, ChatGPT has gotten to the point where it's not a tool you can skip. You kind of have to use it. The way I think about it is studying for a math calculator paper with no calculator. You're just handicapping yourself for no reason. Now, I always drill the point that GCSEs are relative. Let's say, for example, you get 50% on a paper. That sounds really low, right? But you could still get a 9. If 95% of people doing that test with you got less than you. The grade boundaries are always relative to how everyone else does. And so if everyone else is using ChatGPT to study and you aren't, then you're handicapping yourself. You're limiting the grades that you could get. You're limiting the efficiency and effectiveness of your studying. And so everyone else will perform better than you in the exam. And so how do we actually use ChatGPT while studying to get those top grades? Well, I decided to ask the source itself. I asked ChatGPT how GCSE students can use it to study more effectively. And it gave me some pieces of advice that I myself have been using throughout A-levels and now throughout uni. And the first and the most obvious piece of advice is to ask it to clarify concepts for you. The beauty about GPT is that it's free. It knows basically most things, and it has infinite patience. Compare that to a tutor, which you have to vet, pay, and they only give you a limited time which you can ask questions in. Maybe you ask those questions and they understand them correctly, and maybe they don't. Maybe they start getting frustrated when you keep on asking questions about a certain topic that you're just not understanding. GPT, on the other hand, is just code. It will never lose patience with you. If there's a concept that I can't really hack, maybe in the science subjects, biology, chemistry, physics, and even computer science, then most of the time I'll ask ChatGPT. And if I keep asking questions, forcing it to elaborate, then it gets to the point where it explains a concept to me better than the textbook could. And this was extremely helpful for me, especially in computer science A-level, because the resources for computer science A-level were just not as available as for biology, chemistry, and physics, because it's not as popular of a subject. Keep hammering at it, and we'll get to a point where it knows exactly what part you don't understand and then explains that part to you. Now, GPT's next piece of advice is to ask it to make questions for you. Now, this is something that I haven't really done, but I could see it being helpful. I wouldn't outright ask it to generate practice questions for me, but I could see a scenario where there's a specific topic that I want more practice in, but I've already done all of the practice questions available. And so I could copy those questions that I've done into ChatGPT and ask it to generate questions based on those questions. And so it gets some sort of general idea on how the exam board likes to structure their questions, and it could generate more questions based on that. Now, another way you could use ChatGPT while studying is something that hits home dearly for me, and that is to use it to help you with essay writing. Now, of course, I'm not saying let it do your homework for you by writing essays or whatever, but you could use it to refine your thesis, suggest arguments, and give you some examples to support your points. And the reason this hits home for me is because back in my GCSE days, the subjects that I struggled with the most were English Lit and English Lang. Looking back, I was just not good at forming arguments and then supporting them. If I had ChatGPT, I think it could have guided me through the process of forming arguments and then supporting them based on certain texts. And then I could have used that skill that I just built up using ChatGPT in my actual exams. Now, GPT can also really help you if you take a modern foreign language, but I'm not going to waffle because I myself didn't take one. And so here's what GPT says it could help you with. But again, I don't want to elaborate on this because I don't want to speak out of my backside. And now the final thing that GPT can help you with is to generate notes and flashcards. If you know me, you'd know that I'm a huge believer that everyone should make their own notes and flashcards because it's a natural part of the learning process. But there are some cases where you might want to use pre-made notes or flashcards. Maybe you're running short on time, or it's a topic you already have a pretty decent understanding in, so you don't want to waste time on it. And so what you could do is take an excerpt from the textbook or a study guide and then ask GPT to turn it into notes or flashcards. If they're notes, I'll just copy them into a Google Doc, which I could then look at later. And if they're flashcards, then I'd open up Anki app and just copy them over. Again though, I have to stress that it's always better to make your own notes and flashcards. Now of course every subject is different, and the things we just talked about are general ideas. But every subject has its own unique quirks, and so we could use GPT in a unique way to make the learning process for that subject more efficient. For example, only for computer science can you use GPT to debug code or to explain a certain function for you. So what I would do, if I could go back, is to just sit down and look at all of the subjects that I take. I'll then ask myself for each subject how I can use ChatGPT to shortcut some things in the studying process that don't really contribute to how I learn. That will make my studying way more efficient and give me an edge over most of the other students.